What's good, everybody, and welcome to the new and improved Wednesday Wisdom Series. We're going to start this off with a bang this week. My first guest on the new and improved show is a brother who has had his hand on the ground from day one. This is Tory Russell. He's an activist from St. Louis, Missouri. He was one of the first people on the ground after the killing of Mike Brown. He's a Ferguson frontliner, and he's the mission director of the International Black Freedom Alliance. So, Tory, how you doing?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
Doing well, my man. I just want to get started by asking you, we're in the midst of the fifth, going into the 6th year of this movement that started with the killing of Mike Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. Would you mind giving people sort of a background, what it's like growing up like Mike Brown in a city like St. Louis and in Ferguson, Missouri?
Well, we don't really make a difference. It's St. Louis City and St. Louis County. Ferguson is kind of like a suburb. But if you know St. Louis, where the black people populate, it's kind of like a hood suburb. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like, it ain't quite the hood and it ain't quite the suburbs. And so living in St. Louis is a rough place. Mike Brown, just like me, he went to one of the lowest performing high schools in the city. His father's from the west side. I'm from the west side. So he grew up, in the food desert. Poor schools, police brutality was the norm, low job opportunities, desecrated from the 60s and 70s from black people owning their own businesses. It's no place to work. There's no businesses started. And so, like Mike Brown mama said, she worked hard for that young man to even graduate. And so the fact that after his graduation in May, he was killed in August before he can start school and try to start his career is indicative of St. Louis, be it, homicides, because we #1 in the country, murders per capita, or police killings. We have almost 2 a month in the most second segregated city in the country behind Philadelphia. To me, St. Louis is racism on steroids.
All right. Once the killing of Mike Brown happened, everybody saw everybody on the street, everybody protesting, everybody pushing back against systemic police brutality and systemic racism. What did activism in Ferguson look like after Mike Brown's killing immediately?
Activism to me is, if you ain't in the streets, you ain't really active. And so we had to take whatever you was talking about on social media, how you was feeling in them backdoor meetings, we had to take that to the street and take that directly to the police. And so we did that. And our activism, looked different. It ain't Dr. King. It ain't Malcolm with no suit on and some brothers with T-shirts and hats on, maybe some Jordans and Justice, maybe some sisters with some halter top, crop tops on. It didn't matter. We was all out there just for black liberation, to get justice for a young black boy who could have been any one of us dead in the street.
Did you get a lot of pushback from movement elders and people who are a little bit older because of that?
Yeah, I still get it. They always say be strategic. And so I think I have never seen an alternative strategy in my lifetime work, right? So I ain't never seen buy black work. I ain't never seen vote black work. I ain't never seen that work out. But I have seen in history before my time and my time is that when black people turn up, riot, rebel, uprising, whatever you want to call it, it gets shit done. And, we know anger gets shit done, man. So you're a mass amount of majority black people outside without movement, organizing, training, but they had the rhetoric, right? So I was just having this conversation with an organizer, Q in Alabama. He was asking, what's the difference? And I was saying, the movement gives you language really to confuse you. So now you have all this language, right? So if you steal my house, and I say that, I think that's pretty clear what we're talking about. But the movement say that's colonialism, that's gentrification, right? So these words replace the actual actions too. Because if you're talking about it too much in a very heady kind of way, that means you probably ain't confronting that thing that you're talking about. And I think in Ferguson, you had to confront it, right? So it wasn't just Mike Brown, it was housing, the housing crisis in Ferguson. It was 2 Fergusons. It was segregated part of Ferguson with the Negro businesses. It was the white part. And so we saw the dynamic play out. The people in the street had the rhetoric that was talking to the masses of people. the movement talks to academic scholars and people and white folk looking for the white gaze and not the black masses.
Okay. Did you see the tone of the protests and the tone of activism in the city start changing when you saw academics and you saw people coming in who maybe weren't connected to the streets, but they had all the jargon that you just discussed?
Yeah, I mean, so as Ferguson is the essence, the genesis of the movement. So everybody who was somebody came to Ferguson at one point in time. I can tell you, my own two eyes. Everybody ain't who they say they are on social media. So when it gets closer to the hood, when it start getting closer to black people actually doing their thing, I seen some of your movement leaders jump up on the cars, jump into cars, run down the streets, and stay in hotel rooms live tweeting about a protest they wasn't at. And so Ferguson is kind of like Minneapolis in some kind of ways, and Baltimore and Oakland in some kind of ways. You're going to get baptized in the fire. Somebody going to check your temperature if you ain't coming correct.
All right. Once the uprising began, the media descended on Ferguson. That sort of attention has been a feature of protests against police brutality in America ever since then. How did that media attention affect the events in Ferguson, did you think?
I don't know, man. I think kind of moved people to give them more protest porn. I remember a time where we was doing some stuff and something got set on fire and the cameraman said, hey, look, can you put that fire out and start it again so I can get it, so I can send it in? I'm a freelance journalist. So it's like, for me, it wasn't.
Somebody asked y'all to start a fire again, what now?
Yeah, because the fire was in the trash can, right? You just keeping it a buck, man. You set this trash can on fire because the smoke go up in the sky and then move the helicopters out, right? So shout out to Palestine for teaching us that lesson. And so for me, when we start doing that stuff to survive, the media was like, let me see that, right? And so I think at one point they just wanted what we call protest porn, the money shot. Some angry black man, angry black woman, stand up, fist up. But when it came time to cultivate the story deeper and wider, we didn't get that, So now the Washington Post could be for the protest and do that, but Wesley, Lowry, and them, when they first came, they was writing hit pieces on protesters. You know what I'm saying? So I see the shift. BET came, everybody come, but they want to tell their side to sensationalize it. And I would say I would prefer if you romanticize the struggle or the revolution than sensationalize it, because you make it something that it ain't. You make it something pretty, you make it something where everybody's sitting somewhere with a MacBook thinking about these great strategies with the dopest t-shirts on. And in actuality, that ain't no rebellion, that ain't no uprising. That's definitely not what Ferguson was.
All right. I want to touch on that for a second. You said it seems like the imagery and the energy of grassroots social justice work has been adopted by the mainstream. Do you think that's true? And if so, how has that impacted grassroots movement work?
Well, I think we live in America, man. We live in the United States of America where when they can't beat it over the head and kill it, they co-opt it and commodify it, monetize it. So we all know the game, and I think some activists knew the game, and I think some media people knew the game. So you pick the person that you want, you build up that person platform, and it becomes a mutual kind of thing, Academics give a good synopsis about Ferguson, make case studies about Ferguson, but most of them ain't never been on the ground, ain't never been hit with tear gas before. Mm-hmm. So, it becomes like this point where the people that white people have sanctioned as movement historians, movement academics, and movement activists, get to put on a blue vest and get an endorsement deal from it. Meanwhile, the masses of our people are not receiving healthcare, housing, jobs, businesses, or any policy or even politicians who will implement the things that we're talking about in the street. I think that's where we are. I'm always reluctant if McDonald's and Wells Fargo and Chase Bank can put Black Lives Matter in a memo, it must not be too dangerous to white supremacy.
All right. Going back to what you said earlier about academia and the conversation being moved away from the street, these conversations have definitely become dominated by academia and punditry. How can people directly affected by these issues be heard again?
I think what it's gonna take, man, is that we have to build an authentic movement. I think what we're seeing now in this movement, the media's calling Black Lives Matter, and I've been around the country and around the world protesting. Most of these things are not even organized by Black Lives Matter organization, movement people, even the network, quote unquote. And so it's a media narrative that's being pushed from somewhere, right, by these movement people. And I think the academics and media people have to gravitate to it. But I think what we do in Ferguson is we force people to the street. I think what we have to do a better job of is coining what we call our own movement. I don't think Ferguson was a sexy enough catchphrase to be called a movement, unfortunately. But I just think people got to get to the streets. I always felt like the things that the media say about Minneapolis, or when I went to, I just got back from Louisville for Breonna Taylor. I stayed there for over a month. With Until Freedom, is like what they saying in the air, they ain't matching what's actually happening on the ground. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, I think at one point you care about it, and then another part is like when we on the ground, really that don't really matter. It may drive the conversation, it may drive funding, but it don't drive the actual minds and hearts of the people in the movement.
So you're saying that creating a movement that's strictly connected to the people and grassroots is how to make that change?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way we've ever had a movement for Black people in this country. I think we get fooled. I think, on Twitter, a couple weeks ago, we was talking about, like, we had these debates about, you looking at, like, Black women need to lead and this, and that. And then we saw an actual physical representation in real life, right, of Black women being put on the front lines to get hit with mace, tear gas, pepper spray, beat up, hog-tied, carted off, right? And people like, that's wrong. The same people who said that was wrong yesterday was saying that that's how the protest should look, right? Because I know they ain't out there, so it don't really matter, right? So they putting people in danger. And I'm not saying this because I'm in Ferguson. We had everybody on the front line, Black, queer, it didn't matter. If you want the smoke, you're gonna be on the front line. But to just denigrate people and say that you got to be here or do this for symbolism. I think we had 8 years of Obama. I thought Negroes would be tired of symbolism. I think we would want some substance on our plate by now.
Oh, man. Speaking of symbolism, we're in an election year. How much will electoral politics factor into changing the conditions of Black people this year?
I hate to break it to you, but if you believe that your freedom or liberation is going to come through a ballot box, I have oceanfront property to sell you in Idaho. It just ain't going to work out for you. I think you can set better conditions, right, if the conditions are on a platform. But we in the United States is different from other places. We talk about personalities, and we're not talking about policy. And so I don't give a damn if I like Trump or Biden. I ain't here to like Harris or Pence. I ain't here to like you. I need some substance. So how much of that small business administration am I getting for my people? What is the HBCU budget? How much free, affordable healthcare, free or affordable housing, free, affordable higher education am I gonna get? Or you actually, if you got one president saying to the white supremacists, stand back and stand by. You got the other one saying cease and desist. But you ain't got nobody or no party saying we're going to come after you and we're going to do to you what we did to the Black Panther Party, what we did to the Nation of Islam, what we did to the Black Liberation Army, what we did to the Brown Berets, and so on and so forth. And so unless you have a party saying that, right, you ain't going to get it. You know what I'm saying? So you can have a figurehead at the top, but if the Democratic Party not trying to give you universal health care, it ain't going to happen. Right, because it ain't just one person gonna do that. And I think in the U.S., I don't know what year it is, man. I feel like we voting like it's 1840.
Why do you think the Democratic establishment isn't addressing these issues?
I think they are also a white supremacist organization. Just to be quite frank, I think Joe Biden and Doug Jones are in the same party for a reason. They both Democrats. They both look up to Strom Thurmond. They both work with him. They both admire the policies put forth. And so it's Black people in this United States of America, in this country, who've never been able to vote, be it in Mississippi, Alabama, Pennsylvania, or Ohio. You see what I'm saying? Like Malcolm said, anything below Canada is the South. And in the South, Negroes can't vote everywhere. And so if we have an unjust system and both parties have been in power, right? And I'm not talking about like one piece of power. I'm talking about the Democrats had the House, the Senate, and the White House in 2009 to 2011. Nothing for Black people, right? The Republicans have it now. In 96, they had it. So we could talk about this, but both of them are upholding white supremacy. And that's why the Democrats nor the Republicans will address Black issues head on.
All right. In the 6 years since the Black civil rights and human rights struggle reemerged for the general public, what changes have you seen in American society, if any, because of that?
I think more people are awake. I just don't think more people are active. You know what I'm saying? So I think we shook the bed, but not too many people got up out the bed. And I think that's what we see in social media activism. I said it in 2014. People didn't like it, and I'm saying it now. Hashtags will not change your community. It won't stop a bullet from going through your head, and it don't create policy. And so what we have to do is get beyond the social media thing, get beyond being the wokest person with a woke t-shirt, with a woke book bag. And we have to get to a point where we actually going for power. I don't like access. That means I'm begging white folk for an entry-level job. I don't like influence. That means I still have to depend on white people to execute my plan. Black people have to have the power, independent of everything else, to do what we need to do for our own people. And I think the movement right now has prided itself on waking Negroes up, but not moving them towards a certain goal, agenda, or anything like that. If I was to ask the everyday Black person, what does Black Lives Matter stand for? They would probably say, one, it's an LGBTQ Black movement. And I said this perfect. It's an LGBTQ Black movement. They put the LGBTQ in front of Black policies and agendas. And if they ask what's the goal and agenda, it would be ambiguous at best, man. I don't really think that it's not like a 10-point plan that the masses of people can understand. It's too wordy. It's too academic. That's how I know the people that's actually on the ground and create that.
Okay. Last question here. What do you see for the future of organizing in Black America, and what would you change about it?
Unfortunately, I'm not seeing kind of well, man. I think we still doing something stupid, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. We still playing this protest politics kind of game. The protest leader aspires to be in Congress, aspires to be in the Senate, wants to be the mayor, wants to be these things, not to vastly transform a system, but to be a figurehead, right? And it becomes this kind of thing. And so we have a few people like that that's trying to go in there and do something. And I mean literally a few. Like my father would say, it's enough to count on one hand, and you ain't gonna use all your fingers. And so what we have to do is we have to get to a point where we go beyond electoral politics, use that as a small piece to set the conditions, right? But we have to go beyond it. So how are we housing ourselves? How are we creating healthcare? I'm not saying white folk healthcare. I'm talking about that thing where you drinking that juju tea and you getting cleansed, right? You talking about some turmeric and some of that natural thing that we did before we was colonized. Same thing that got us through slavery. That housing thing, that education thing. I'm not saying going to being the smartest Negro to go to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, because I don't, I think it was, I can't remember who said it, but, more Negroes' minds have been ruined in Ivy League schools than any other place in the world. And so we need more Black people to go to HBCUs, but we need the HBCUs to become revolutionary, right? It can't be the house Negro center, right? And so, yes, there's some smart Negroes at Howard, but I want to see how smart the Negroes are at Alcorn State and Talladega. Lane and Langston. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we have to have a consensus on what is a curriculum for revolution, a curriculum for Black liberation, housing for Black liberation, healthcare for Black liberation, and we need more people to actually, get their hands dirty in the movement. And I always say I like my academics with dirty fingernails. I like them to be doing something. And so even if you're going to be a media personality, be it for Black liberation. Don't just do what white folk do and get your check. Talk about the stories that's going to liberate the minds and the hearts of people. And I think we all do. But I would also ask you to just, you could do that at the IBFA. So you can go to the IBFA.org, join, and we got a plan for you.
All right. Tory Russell, activist, St. Louis, Missouri, Ferguson Frontline, mission director of the International Black Freedom Alliance. Thank you for your time, brother.
Just free Mamiya.
No doubt.